So sociology is the study of social behavior and practices, essentially. So what sociologists like me do is we try to make sense of the world and try to understand why people behave this way in groups and what are the patterns to their behavior. At the heart of sociology is a relationship between history and biology. We try to look at things over time and to figure out how things over time, plus how we're made, right, shapes how we experience the world. And we try to look at how we experience the world shapes what the world becomes, right? And so we do this by distinguishing two core things. We talk a lot about individual problems, things that frustrate you, that has to do with, your specific life. And we try to think about things that frustrate large groups of people, things that have to do with not just you, but thousands and millions of people, and how those things work. So sometimes one of the things we say in sociology is like, if you're unemployed, right, that might make your life really bad. That could mean that you don't have money, you can't buy clothes, you are unable to do a whole host of things. Your individual family might suffer, and you might suffer as well. And that could be a problem. You might have been tardy to work all the time and you got fired, right? Something happened, some action that you did led to your being fired. And so that individual problem is yours and you have to take the L. When we look at unemployment, we look to see, do people who look like you, live where you live, share your gender, are they most likely to be unemployed? And what can we learn from that? Because when it is something that's happening to you, but that same thing is happening to a lot of people, we want to try to make sense of that. And we try to make sense of the relationship between what is happening largely in the world and what's happening with ourselves. So in the case of Marley, right, and not having the book, right, is this really a Marley problem? Like, child, your school, your teacher, they're whack, whatever, right? It is something that's happening to you and you should think about how to fix your life. Or when we now look and see that only 3% of all books have Black people as the main character, then it's not just a Marley problem. Now we have a social problem. But we have to be able to think about what's happening to us and whether what's happening to us is only unique to us. And one of the things that by virtue of being a John Jay, you are already keenly aware is that many of the things that you're experiencing inside of John Jay and outside of John Jay are not just happening to you. And the question is, given that there's something bigger at play, where can you begin to take the first step in making sure that you not only alleviate the problem for yourself, but you alleviate the problems for a large group of people? Too often, people try to only alleviate the problems for themselves. And the example that I say to people is that when you take that approach, that problem will come back. It will flare up. So as a person who might be selfishly interested in having their lives be good, your best bet is to try to figure out how to make everybody's life good. If you really want to make sure that people don't bother you, don't rob you, don't kill you, don't take your stuff, your best bet is to figure out how people can have stuff, feel safe, and be healthy. Because when everybody's doing all right, then you do even better. And that is why not only I study sociology, but I parent with sociology. And that's really a part of the very small step that all of us can take to move ourselves forward.
So here's the thing, for me at least, in my personal experience of coming up with the idea for 1000 Black Girl Books, is that all of us have frustrations in our everyday life. there's something that aggravates us, whether it's our food not coming on time when we order something, or scraping your knee and falling. There are things that happen in our everyday life that are frustrating. And a lot of the times we feel as though those frustrations exist in such a large space. So when I recently did an event where I was talking to kids about how they could change the world. And at the beginning of the event, we asked them what they were passionate about. And some of the answers we got were endangered animals, world hunger, climate change. And these are very important issues, but they exist on a very, very large global scale. And what I encourage people to think about is frustrations that happen in their everyday life. So then when I ask the kids, what happens in your everyday routines and practices that annoys you? One kid said, well, we had to do a materials pickup for school and they didn't have my art supplies. Now that's a great example to use for something that could actually be pushed for to create social change and to fill a gap in your community. You know what it's like to be a student that can't get the crayons and markers they need, and you realize that the 30 other classmates you have in art class are not getting the materials they need. Now we think about and try to answer questions based on that frustration. And the second thing I think that comes alongside frustration is passion. Now, this student in particular really likes to draw. So they are frustrated at a higher level because they're like, this is my favorite subject and I can't even do it right because I don't have what I need. So I think and I encourage all kids, and as now you guys are not kids, you're older than me, but every person when they come up with problems to think about, how does this relate to things that really fuel my joy, that make me happy, that I can talk about to someone for hours and hours? And for me, that was reading. And I encourage kids to think about and try to combine that with books and other books and basketball and drawing and singing, because these things fuel you just beyond that exact moment. And that frustration exists in a space of things that make you happy. And by trying to solve gaps with things that actually really matter to you and no one has to press you about and tell you this is important and you should care about these issues, rather that you automatically do. And it's something that comes from within. Now, we obviously need to be aware of things that aren't necessarily our passions, but I think a good place to start when coming up with actionable change is to focus on things that matter to you and understand how they affect your community and a group on a larger scale. But we do need to start small, and I think it's the best way. Now, the questions that we were focused on, I'm actually going to put into the chat for you guys to see as well, so that you can hopefully copy and paste them, and I don't know where it is. Okay. Copy and paste them and keep them for yourself. So the first questions really are who, what, where, when, why, and how. So it's really simple. And I think it's an important thing that people kind of have to go down on their own checklist and think about. So the first is who does this issue affect? And I'll answer these questions for myself so I can explain how they exist in my own experience. So this issue originally just affected me. I like to read, and I had books at home that showed girls like me, but when I went to school, it was never the case. And I didn't think to bring it up because I was like, oh, I guess my teachers just don't have the books. But then as I was continuing to learn more about the issue, we learned that systemically less books are being published and put into schools that have Black girls as the main character, and generally speaking, just diverse characters in the leads and protagonists of the story. Often we may find them as main characters and sidekicks, but not the main, as side characters and sidekicks, but not as the main character. So this issue affected me, but it affected all students that went to schools that had curriculums with assigned readings. The next is, what is the main problem as you see it? So the main problem as we see it is that there is not enough diversity in schools. We are not having diversity in our curriculums and our books, and we are not refreshing and changing our information that we're passing on to students as time goes by. Of course, at one point, my school was a majority white school, as it still is now, but that does not disqualify or limit the experiences of others when talking about the curriculum. We want to show all kinds of people and all kinds of experiences, even if it is not the majority. The next is, where do you want this project to take place, and where does the problem occur? The problem occurs both in public libraries and in schools, because a lot of the times, even in libraries where students go to get their own books, they don't have enough books that represent what the future may look like, what their current experiences look like, and what people thousands and thousands of miles away look like. And this project would take place online, of course, by promoting it through social media and talking about it, but also by collecting books in an office space or any area that's available to keep donating them. The next is, when is this issue experienced? So this issue is experienced essentially from ages 4 to 18, Of course, college students can say from their own experience if they have more diversity as they get older. If not, of course, I wouldn't know. So I can't talk about what might happen to you guys because I am not you guys. So I really feel like it's important to advocate for things that are based on what you know and learning more as that process grows. Now I can say, when I started the campaign, I was 10, so I couldn't say that this was going to be an issue in high school. There was no way for me to know and confirm that statement and talk about that with such passion because I was in 5th grade. So I said, when I was in 5th grade in elementary school, there wasn't enough books with Black girls as the main characters. So obviously we want to talk about and reimagine a future where this problem doesn't exist, but we need to talk about what we know and what we're able to understand and the patterns we may foresee. So often I would say, I'm in 5th grade right now, and I don't see Black girls as the main characters, and I believe that this may exist when I get older. And I want to make sure that I do something now to interject and hopefully stop a cycle that may or may not continue. So the second to last thing is, why does this issue matter? It matters for 2 reasons. I'm a Black girl, and I want to see people that look like me. I want to know more about our capabilities, our history, our possibilities, people that I can look up to and admire, and feel more connected to the books that I read. Because I think for a lot of students that see themselves, they feel like reading is awesome. It's cool because you see people that are astronauts and archaeologists that look like you, and you don't have to pressure other people to care about your ideas, your thoughts, or your feelings. And it's also important for kids that are not Black girls to see Black girls being cool, to see us do things that are important, and to emphasize the fact that we all have gifts and talents, and that our differences only make those gifts and talents cooler. It doesn't make us a thing that is bad or good. It is merely something that is amazing in its own way. And the final question is, how do you aim to solve it? So for me, that was originally really just collecting and donating 1,000 books. I wasn't going to donate them to myself because I felt like if I really wanted books in my own school, my parents would have just took me to Barnes and Noble and done this and that and the third. But it was really learning more and thinking about kind of, how does it extend beyond me? What about the 10 other Black girls in my class? Do their parents get them books that have Black girls as the main characters? I don't know. And learning more that even in places like Jamaica, where my mom went to school, they didn't have books where Black girls were the main characters in a school that is 99.99% Black, you know? So the original goal was to collect and donate books to the school that my mom attended, the Retreat All Ages school that she was talking about earlier, because I realized that if Black kids in a Black country are not able to understand that their voices matter all over the world, how is that acceptable, and how can we really work to change that all over the world? So I think these questions are really important when you combine them with the personal and the social, the frustrations and the passions. And that's really what I tried to do. And I think by asking yourself these questions in everyone's life, there are moments that really anger us, asking these questions and trying to channel that frustration into something that can be made as a positive impact is really important. Like my mom was saying earlier, a lot of the times when you try to solve a problem for yourself, it comes right back to you, which I find is very true. Like, sometimes a good example also is like if your friends have ever asked you for answers to the homeworks or something, you might give them the answers to the homework, but then they just come back the next week and they come back the next week because they don't know what they're doing. And you're only providing people or yourself with temporary solutions to a permanent problem. And I think it's really important for everyone to remember that when it comes to saying, oh, it's not a big deal, I'll just push through my teachers not saying something that's inappropriate. I'll just push through my friend being inconsiderate of my goals and achievements. Because in reality, these things will always come back to you. I promise you. And I had experiences of not seeing myself past the fifth grade. So I think it's really important to kind of think about, let's actually pursue these things and not just put them on the back burner, because they do come back in our lives, or they come back in someone that we care about in their lives.
Right. I would like to educate people on the seriousness of human trafficking, because I feel lots of people believe it doesn't occur in everyday life in the United States, but it's literally happening under our noses. And I feel it's very important for people to know about that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Sophia. I actually, I just watched this impactful Netflix show called Alantre, I think that's the way you say it, on human trafficking. And there was a journalist who was human trafficked. I didn't know that that's where it was going to go, by the way. It was a person living their lives. They were living their lives and got trafficked. And it didn't end well. Like, it wasn't like I was expecting like a resolve where the person was fine, but it was quite a devastating ending. And I think that this issue is one that really does demand conversation. And we have a host of classes at John Jay that deals with human trafficking. And I know we have some special programs that have tried to take on this issue, but I would say that this is a topic that you would get a lot of traction in within the college by sharing it and letting folks know that you're interested in it. I think you're in the right place to be able to think about how to educate, even if it's about just using your social media of posting a couple of slides about it. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I think one thing that you can do, I think being in a college space gives you a unique opportunity. Obviously, I'm not speaking from my own personal experience, but I feel like at least existing in a space together that's both online and in the future in person gives you an opportunity to actually be around people and to see and observe how this kind of new culture of being older exists. Our mom's putting our social media into the chat. Dr. Professor Janice Johnson is putting it in the chat. I don't know what you're supposed to say. So I think creating infographics on social media is a great thing, and having the opportunity to start maybe clubs or commissions. And I think one thing you want to think about is there's two kinds of levels to equity and educating people on issues, is awareness and consciousness. So what you want to do is to raise awareness, to let people know that this is going on, that they actually need to focus on it. But one thing you might want to consider is also making sure that people are conscious, as in they look around in their everyday lives and they start to remember that this is a thing that exists around me, that this could happen to someone like me or people that I care about. So awareness is giving people facts and information, which is a really important place to start, and make sure that you can get all the people you know on the same level of understanding kind of the basic facts. But then thinking about the people that will come up with ideas with you or help you develop this idea need to be conscious. They need to know and be able to speak with kind of their own sense of, education and knowledge on the issue, and explaining to people real life examples. And you need to do that obviously yourself personally to make sure that you are able to lead with a certain kind of confidence and pride in what you're talking about, and making sure that if you decide to start programs or clubs or make t-shirts, that all these people that are helping you and supporting you are on that level too. Because what you and how you build community is a representation of your own thoughts and ideas, whether you want it to be or not. So I always make sure that I give people everything I can, so that when they think about 1000 Black Girl Books or think about me, they know that I'm always trying my best, even if it doesn't come out perfect. So I think making sure that you know as much as you can about the issue, and then going from there to build awareness and consciousness, is something to remember. But I really like that idea, and I don't know a lot about it from school, so I think you're doing a great job by considering and talking about this.